Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. The reggae genre has witnessed several thousands of amazing artists over the past 5+ decades, each one sporting unique specialties that made them simply legendary. Dennis Brown had the voice, Peter Tosh could play the hell out of the guitar, and Bob Andy was one titan of a songwriter. But there are very few who have had all these attributes all rolled into one package, like the amazing Frankie Paul. This insanely talented artist is among the most complete musicians that we have ever come across. On the vocal tip, he was a disciple of reggae's most influential vocalists in Dennis Brown before developing his own unique powerful throaty technique. And if we're talking about instruments, he was like a one-man band and was an expert drummer, guitarist, and piano player who would sometimes play all the instruments on his songs. And if we're talking about songwriting, he's virtually untouchable in terms of quality and volume of pen material, and estimated to have written and performed more than 5,000 songs. In his 3-decade-plus career, he was dubbed by many as Jamaica's own Stevie Wonder, not particularly on account of him having visual impairment like his American counterparts, but due to both men having similar musical talents and attributes. And interestingly, a chance one-on-one meeting with Stevie Wonder is what led him on a path to a career in music, as we will see later in this video. Frankie Paul was part of that first great wave of dancehall artists who emerged at the start of the 1980s, and alongside the likes of Barrett Levy and Pinchers would make up the few singers amidst an army of toasters, eventually becoming among the most prolific and celebrated dancehall artists of his generation. But even when dancehall began to go down a violent and sex-crazed path, Frankie Paul always kept his music fun and free of such vices. And did I forget to mention that at his peak, he was just as dapper and suave as the great Gregory Isaacs. There's so much to say about this great icon, so without further ado, let's take a look at the incredible life and journey of Frankie Paul. He was born Paul Blake in Kingston on the 19th of October 1965. He was born blind, but as a very young child had his sight partially restored via an operation and was taken to New York, where he was given a pair of high-powered glasses that would help him see a little. His father passed away when he was really young, so he was raised by his mother. He grew up around music, as his mother would organize musical dances and also sang in the choir. And when he reached school age, he was enrolled at the Salvation Army School for the Blind in Kingston, an institution that would prepare him for what would become a life path. And while there, he learned how to sing and would also master musical instruments like the drums, the piano, and the guitar. He became the best singer in the school, and this would bring him face to face with his destiny. In October 1975, American superstar Stevie Wonder came to Jamaica for a historic show called the Wonder Dream Concert, which would hold at the National Stadium in Kingston. That show was a benefit concert designed to raise money for the Jamaican Institute for the Blind. As part of his itinerary, Stevie Wonder was scheduled to pay a visit to the Salvation Army School for the Blind, and that would bring him face to face with Frankie Paul. So one fine morning, it was looking like any regular day at school when the school bell rang out of the blue, and all the students were summoned to come to the assembly hall for a big surprise. And Frankie Paul was first surprised that the school keyboards and microphone were all set up, but almost fainted when he found out that Stevie Wonder, who was one of his idols, was visiting their school. Being the school's best singer, he was called up to the stage to play and sing, and after a rendition of Johnny Nash's I Can See Clearly Now, he got a standing ovation and a thrilling compliment from Stevie Wonder himself, who told him he had a beautiful voice and to keep it up, and hopefully he would go international one day. That electrifying experience, more than anything, got Frankie Paul to start thinking about a career in music. So after he finished school, singing and performing became his oxygen, and he would break into a song at every opportunity. And around 1980, while living in Denham Town, a tough neighborhood in downtown Kingston, he'd already made a name for himself in his neighborhood with his lovely voice, which he modeled after his idol Dennis Brown. Incidentally, he was neighbors with a kid who was a year younger than he was, and was also an aspiring musician, but also a hothead who loved hanging with the rude boys in his hood. Frankie Paul became very friendly with that 14-year-old and encouraged the boy to explore his musical talents and stay far away from street life. And eventually, the advice worked, and that boy named Clive Bright would eventually find success as a DJ under the stage name of Tenor Saw. Frankie Paul loved to sing in the streets, and every time he did, a small crowd would gather and watch him. One day, some guys who saw him doing his thing went to meet him and told him that they would take him to meet someone who could develop his talent and take everything to the next level. So those men took him to meet Earl China Smith, ace guitarist and band member of Bob Marley and the Wailers. Smith became Frankie Paul's mentor and would guide and nurture his talent until he released his first single, African Princess. and that song would become a big hit upon release. His outrageous talent suddenly saw him in high demand by several producers in Kingston, and by 1982, he had recorded his first album, Give the Youth a Chance, and the year after that, he began to record for Channel 1 Studios and record label. And to show you how much of a prodigy that he actually was, Frankie Paul was included on 2 volumes of a showdown series that was the Clash kind of album, and he was featured in head-to-head with his more senior and way more established colleague, Sugar Minott. And in addition to Channel 1, Frankie Paul was also recording for various labels and producers like Jammies, Harry J's, and lots of others. But he would truly enter into the elite bracket of dancehall artists when he was taken on by legendary producer Henry John Joe Laws in 1982. John Joe Laws is regarded as being the primary force that truly established dancehall as a unique subgenre of reggae music at the start of the new decade. His retinue of artists like Yellowman, Barrington Levy, Ika Mouse, Billy Boyo and others became the ones that truly made dancehall an international sensation, and Frankie Paul would soon become a member of that esteemed crew. Frankie Paul had first met John Joe at the age of 17 when he snuck into the studio where the producer was supposed to record. So when John Joe Laws came into the studio to record something else, Frankie Paul came out of hiding, and John Joe was angry to see him and asked, "Whose boy is this?" And Frankie boldly replied that he could sing. So John Joe told the sound engineer to play him a rhythm for the boy to sing over, and Frankie Paul seized that chance and totally killed it. John Joe was blown away, and from that day he would record tons and tons of music with the producer, including 2 of his classics and breakout hits in the insanely popular Herb anthem Pass the Two Sheng Peng and the dance floor banger titled Worries in the Dance Hall. And these 2 tracks became smash hits that really made Frankie Paul a local and international superstar. Fans were mesmerized by his incredible voice and sweet melodies, and not to mention the staggering amount of music that was pouring out of these amazing artists. Paul personally estimated that he wrote as many as 5,000 songs. And it's fair to say that only Gregory Isaacs was as prolific as Frankie Paul, and while the Cool Ruler's quality of sound would decline with increased quantity, Frankie Paul's quality endured despite the increase in volume. And by the mid-1980s, he was a bona fide international superstar, especially with the release of his 2 excellent albums like Tidal Wave, which came out in 1985, and Warning, that came out in 1987. The man was simply unstoppable and began to spark comparisons to his idol Dennis Brown. It was even rumored that Dennis Brown had an issue with Frankie Paul, but that speculation was doused when Frankie Paul played his first major concert in the UK in 1989 at the Brixton Academy in London and was introduced to the stage by Dennis Brown himself. Frankie Paul's appeal was something else. He could sing a monkey out of a tree and was a giant on stage. He always cut a dapper figure with his sleek suits and charm and had his own unique way to electrify any crowd. He would end the 1980s as one of dancehall leading lights and carry that incredible form up into the 1990s. He was cheering up every stage at every major reggae festival around the globe, and after a show in Gambia, he would move to and settle in that African country in 1994. He maintained his great form at the very pinnacle of dancehall and stayed relevant despite the incredible heavy hitters that came into their own in the 90s and right up to the early 2000s. But amidst all his great success, he began to experience health challenges and develop kidney problems that would eventually force him to move back to Jamaica. But despite his ill health, he kept on performing right up to 2016 when he had to undergo surgery to amputate a small portion of his right leg. It's sad to note that despite all his success, he would begin to experience financial difficulties and lack of money, all due to growing medical bills and his inability to keep on working. And sadly, he passed away on the 18th of May 2017 at the age of 51. A truly sad end to one of reggae's most talented and beloved figures, and another cautionary tale about the brutal nature of the music business. He was an awesome artist whose music sold tens and tens of millions of records, maybe more. But throughout his career, he hardly received any royalties and was left hanging when he needed money the most. But all in all, Frankie Paul's contribution to the history of reggae music can't be spoken about enough. He was undoubtedly among reggae's greatest ever vocalists and most complete musicians that the genre has ever seen or may ever see again. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.